yo, Raquel y luego los últimos. Sí. In the presentation, you are the last.
Yes.
So first, Gonzalo, I continue. After Raquel explain a little bit the public program, and after you, whatever you turn. We are doing both Basque and Spanish,
Yes.
and you can do whatever you want because there is translation. Continue.
Yes.
Okay, I think we will be more articulated in English.
Yes.
We tried. We did a few presentations
In English. So you speak
Portuñol
English
and
fluently. You have no
Very
front.
weird.
Yes. Yes.
It's quite nice.
Our Basque Spanish English is very poor, but I'll try.
You have a very good English. I understand
Don't think
everything
so.
you say.
Yes. International
Vas,
English. Not very academic English, but
Siéntate,
try.
vamos a ver. Arriba.
So,
Funny.
oh, funny.
Because they are going to dance, no?
And
Cuando nos digan, ¿eh? Yes.
Pues haz unas palabras antes para que te
Bai.
copien.
Bai. Bai, entzuten da? Bai.
Bai.
Bueno, ondo ikusten.
Well, I think we can start. Good morning and welcome, especially to Joao and Romani. Good morning and welcome to the press conference on the exhibitive Paxton exhibition, Drafting Interior Techniques, that will be opening today at 7:30 in this very same room. So we have Raquel Esparza, she's the director for programming. We have also Fernando, the director of the center. And then we have the curators, Joao and Romain. So be welcome to Bilbao, please. This exhibition that will be open up until May the 10th is a cooperation with Culture Guest in Lisbon. And I would like to thank you especially for their help and their contribution to present this very important retrospective exhibit on Steve Paxton. As you can appreciate, this exhibition hall in the Azcuna Centro now for some months is going to be a performing arts stage, and it gets us closer to the legacy of this great choreographer. He's one of the best dance authors in the last century. So Azcuna Centro is also now a benchmark also in contemporary dance in Bilbao. With this project, we represent the character of the Azcuna Centro. That is a center that would like to combine different disciplines, combine the society with the culture, and proposes and suggests new socio-cultural experiences. And now he repeats in his, he likes to say, with modern cultures in plural. So these are different ways to understand culture and suggest different languages and different experiences. And also this is also about what culture means for Bilbao. So sincerely, finally, thank you very much once again. And now, Fernando, you have the floor. Well, thank you very much, Gonzalo. And good morning also. And thank you, Joao, Romain, and Raquel. It is very important to us, this exhibit on Steve Paxton. I would say this is a big event that is a part of this 10th anniversary of the center. We're holding this exhibition, and then within the summer and fall and winter periods, we will have different big events to celebrate this 10th anniversary. And these are the fruit of the cooperation with different agents like Tabacalera, culture guest, Lisbon, Steve Paxton, with drafting interior techniques. It's really something that gets together some of the elements that we require for this kind of events. That is international cooperation. It is also about an exhibit that shows all those elements that are part of the art of a movement, and they add a value to this exhibition. We go beyond the standard format with this exhibition. This is not just a simple danced event. And now he repeats in Spanish. So for us, this is a very special exhibition about Paxton, a very important one. This is a big event within this year's 10th anniversary. We have Laura Laurez in June and September, and Mavi Revuelta in between October and January next year. So in these three cases, this is the fruit of the cooperation with other cultural projects like K2M, Tabacalera Madrid, and in this case also with Culture Guest Lisbon. I would like to acknowledge them especially for their work and for their generosity. Steve Paxton Drafting Exterior Techniques is an exhibit that shows or combines some of the elements we request for this kind of exhibits. So it is about international cooperation that moves among different disciplines with different formats, and that show moving arts, and also show the legacy of big artists, like in this case, Steve Paxton. So this is about an encounter of art with a very important file, with audiovisual pieces, with interviews, with installations, and also with different things related to the visual arts, symbology, and so on and so forth. I would like to also say that for the first time, this room opens this space opens this room. I mean, the Azcuna Center opens this space to dance, contemporary dance. So we're talking about memory, audiovisual narrative, and performing art here. This is a project that, as I said, in Basque, we've been doing with Culture Guest Lisboa, and there it took place in between March and June 2019. And now there is a public also program with some performances and an international workshop that Raquel Esparza will explain. So this is really pioneering program, and we've got to say that Steve Paxton has been one of the choreographers in the last century, and also very important for the contemporary thinking. He is a thinker in movement, and he's been dwelling on different subjects since the beginning of the 50s. And he's been working together with the different benchmarks in the field of contemporary dance internationally in different disciplines, with Jose Limon, with Merce Cunningham, with Ruschenberg, with Simone Forti, with Yvonne Rayner, and with them he co-started the Jackson Dance Theatre and the Grand Union Collective. In the 60s, and 70s and 80s, he contributed to the creation of really new methods like material for a spine or contact improvisation that meant a tipping point in the history of modern contemporary dance. So this is the fruit of a huge research, of a documentary work that has been done by the curators Joao Fiadeiro and Romain Biget. Thank you very much for doing this visual archive on these big frontrunner and benchmark in the fields of contemporary dance. And also there is an education program and practice where we're going to have workshops and international workshops where the most important researchers in this field and also practitioners in this field of dance by means of the codes of Steve Paxton's will come and share his work with you, and Raquel Esparza will now give you further details of these workshops. Well, Good morning. I've got to say that Paxton practices different forms and shapes, and this is why we've organized a public program with our curators, and the target is to pay tribute to his legacy. It's very interesting to also organize a public a program related to every exhibit. And in this case, it's particularly important to show correctly the work done by Steve Paxton. And then we will follow his work thanks to different experts that will come and share their different approaches. So we will get closer. We will make these be closer to the Bilbao audience. So we have. She repeats that now they've drafted a new public program with the curators, Joao and Romain. So a public program is important in order for the people to get closer to the exhibit itself. And in this case, it is of paramount importance to see the different layers of and appreciate the different layers of the work of Steve Paxton. We're working with different contributors and partners in order to see different approaches to this work, and therefore we will reach a largest audience. Tomorrow, 21st of February, we will start with Juri Kohar from Slovenia. He is going to reinterpret the solo flat, exploring simple movements like sitting down, walking, or focusing, and satisfying lover. It's about exploring the movement of 42 local performers that will walk on the stage. And also a very good, well-known improvisation, Goldberg Variations. This is a dialogue with this same music by Bach. And this is also a starting point to the work done by the Basque choreographer John Munduate. And we will see this in March the 12th. And this is a work about the video that he recorded, and this is related to the next work, that is translations. And this is going to be the foundations for the new piece that they will show. And we have here Jon Munduate, so they can share more information with you if you want about these projects. And then we have Malpelo, this Catalan company. They also approach Goldberg Variations, but with a different show based on the Dante Fair pianist approach to this. And then we have workshops about Steve Paxton that will start on March the 11th, and then with Patricia Kippers, and then we will go on in March with Otto Ramstad, and then there will be an international workshop with Ishia Rozas as curator. And there we will see Maria Muñoz, Romain, and John Mundata, Kula Iraduato Oyena, Pil Ramis, and Steve Paxton on a video conference will be part of this seminar talking to Pep. So I'd like to say that every Sunday from 11:30 to 12:30, the space studio here will be activated in the tatami that we have next door, and it will be Eki doing so. This is this Contact Euskal Herria Association, and different work practitioners will provide these workshops. You are all free to join us. It will be free. Yes, I mean, up until it gets fully booked. So really, this is benchmarking the field of contemporary dance. So that's all I had to say. Thank you. We give the floor to the curators.
Yes, I mean, for us, it's an amazing honor to be able to come to Bilbao and present this exhibition. We thank Bilbao, the city, and we thank, of course, Azkuna Centroa. The relationship with the direction was wonderful since the beginning. There was always a big opening, and we also want to thank all the team. The team was amazing because the exhibition, as you will see, has different layers, has video layer, but also there's a very complex and dramaturgic construction. We play a lot with the architecture, and of course we needed the complicity of everybody, and everybody was very engaged. So for us was an amazing experience to be here. We also had 1 week in November where we spent in Bilbao with different schools of dance, different institutions connected with the practice and the study of dance. And we make sure to do presential or direct relationship with the students, so we could engage them in coming here. This exhibition for our concept has no reason to exist if the community and the students don't come. If they don't use this as an extension of their rooms, their studios, and the exhibition is designed to be occupied. So it's very important that this message somehow goes out and that people feel free and invited to have the experience of the exhibition from the point of view of the dancer and not from the point of view of the viewer only. Yeah? So it's a in-between relationship of the experience of doing and the experience of perceiving. Yes.
In a way, the exhibition is conceived as a sort of Trojan horse for the practices of Steve Paxton to contaminate the places where the exhibition exists. So the play with the schools is part of that game of contaminating, broadcasting the practices. The Sunday practices in the dance studio that you will see there are also bearing this function of hosting people to take classes. And of course, you will see in different places of the exhibition, there are moments where you can any spectator can go into the minimal practices, the sort of portable practices that Steve has evolved, that relate to very pedestrian, very common movements that you all do and maybe wish you had a space to do. For instance, napping. I mean, every day you can come and go to the napping area and use it. That's a clear invitation. And that's conceived as a dance practice, in a way. We will come back to that, but it's a simple idea of what do you feel, what do you experience when you release into the ground, right? So that space will be an invitation as well for this contamination of Steve practices. The sort of a slogan of the exhibition is, or the motto is a question that Steve asked to himself, and somehow we repeat it in every single space that we have occupied. The question is, what is my body doing when I am not conscious of it? I'm making a break in order for the question maybe to circulate a little bit in those bodies that are not in the light right now. Yeah, the choreography of the space has created a big difference between the bodies that are conscious, yeah, and the bodies that are supposed to be conscious of us, but not of themselves. So if we return a little bit this focus, if we shed the light on the bodies that are spectating, the bodies that are not doing, yeah, not being spectated. If we turn the light to those bodies, what is happening? And of course, already probably something changes in your experience of, wow, I'm doing a lot of things, yeah? I have made many decisions of, touching myself, crossing my legs or not, yeah? All that minute choreography is the object of the exhibition. The exhibition is trying to put a light, like gentle light, because that kind of light creates a lot of tensions that change the experience. But so a gentle light so that the consciousness of movement arises in every spectator in the way that Steve Paxton has efforted himself to transmit to his dancers and himself in his like 6-decade-long career.
Yeah, no, just to reinforce that me and Romain, we are not traditional curators in the sense that the reason why we accepted the invitation from Culturgest to do the exhibition in Lisbon was because we felt we had the obligation to do the research we did, and also to bring to the surface, and also to organize an archive that was completely dispersed everywhere in the world, because Steve does not keep anything, or he has no sense of eternity. He's not preparing his archive for future investigation. So 90% of the material you will see in the exhibition doesn't come from him directly, but comes from artists and performers and improvisers that work with him. And of course, within the network we had, we were able to bring together all of this information. And the fact that Steve is still alive, and this is a gift, and we are doing an homage and also paying the respect that he deserves, but not only him, of course, him and his generation, him and, of course, all his peers that are in every room that you can see in this exhibition. Steve doesn't think, when he thinks about him, he doesn't think about him, he thinks about we. So there's no me, there is we. And this is a very important political statement that he does. For instance, the videos that we see here, because this is the room of a study in anarchy, yeah? And the videos we see here are exactly an example of collaboration, horizontal collaboration between choreographers like Trisha Brown and others that had a major influence on the dance, contemporary dance in the post-war epoch. Yeah. So for us, of course, even if Steve doesn't like to have his name so big, he doesn't like to be so. He doesn't want to be in this center, in this light, in this star system, which is inevitable once we do a project like this. So we do that for him. So we offer our bodies for something that he would never do voluntarily by himself. But it's, of course, something we feel this obligation. Both of us have a very close relationship with Steve for many years. For instance, I met him in '88 for the first time. My whole work as a choreographer was influenced by his work, of course. And Romain, a little bit later, also because he's a little bit younger, a little bit later, but he has a very in-depth relationship with Steve's thought, which I find fascinating, because Romain, being a philosopher, has a base. In order to study dance, he understood that he had to study in dance. So he understood that he had to move, to go into the movement and study in the source in order to be able to talk about dance. And so this combination was a very happy, let's say, way to put together this exhibition. And in Lisbon we did it. It was very, very well received by the community. It was very occupied, and we hope that in Bilbao we'll have a similar traction that we had in Lisbon, which from the feedback I'm having in many layers, I have intuition this will be very occupied and very used, which is the aim of the exhibition.
Just want to point on also because I was just named as a philosopher, so I might as well. Just want to point to the quality of Steve as indeed a thinker in movement. You referred to it, Fernando. He wrote extensively. about movement. He has an acute sense of making sentences and crafting words, and not only movement. Everywhere in the exhibition, hidden in the corners because we didn't want it to be too in your face, we put some of those sentences that he crafted. Where this little corner here mentions the practice he had of walking in the street and then trying to catch himself walking by surprise. You know, have you ever tried that? Like you're walking and then you try to understand what you were doing before, yeah, you were walking, and he talks about that as self-hacking. Yeah, that's a beautiful sentence, like a beautiful idea. So Steve's has that practice of wording and not only dancing, or rather wording as a part of dancing. A testament to that is the collaboration that we were able to do with the library, which has a sort of a subsection on dance within the exhibition in the first door. So that was an amazing gift that we had to be in this building that is multifunctional and that has that possibility of affording that we, bring books actually and bring this the study. So there's an invitation of being there also as a place of study, quite literally as a place for reading and consulting either Steve's own writing or, and more importantly, the books that he read and was influenced by. You will find writings by Piotr Kropotkin, who is a famous anarchist biologist. You will find writings of his colleagues, Deborah Hay, Simon Forti, Yvonne Rainer. So all of that context is also part of what we consider to be the study of dance that this exhibition is about. It's a simple sort of a play on word that is quite literal. You know, we talk about the dance studio. Yeah? In Latin, studio means I study. And this is what this exhibition is to be, like a place for studying oneself and each other's movement.
Gracias. No sé si hay alguna pregunta. Sí. Íñigo.
Thank you for the movement. 6 decades of work, can you say something about the main ideas of Paxton? How could you describe his work or his thoughts in movement? Thank you. And if he's comfortable with being kept in a white cube.
One thing that he insisted upon was that this is our work, not his, which means that this is our interpretation of what he does, which is, as Joao was saying, not keeping traces of his work. When he was 30, at the peak of his career in New York, he decided that it was not his job to keep any archive of what he was doing. And so the consequences, as Joao was saying, that nothing in here, none of those videos were kept by him. He has no you go in his place, and it's just piles of things, and you cannot really find anything. So, of course, this is a sort of an attempt at rendering the difference between a work that would be kept as with traces of it, and transmitting, as we were saying, techniques to access the experience. So we play with the Y-Cube's ability to not only show works, which we do, because it's important, it's nice also to just see archives, but also to propose spaces of exploration. Now, so as the studio, as the napping area, many places where the Y-Cube is slightly, put off balance of itself. So we kind of hope that it works for Steve. He said in his very laconic, usual habit, only once he touched me on the shoulder and he said, "You did good." And that was it. So that's the only thing that I know, and I don't know what it meant. I don't even know if it meant that the exhibition was good or something else. So,
He didn't touch my shoulder.
no, he didn't touch, but I did.
But you touched
Right now, I repeated. Concerning the rhythm of the exhibition itself, as you might have read before, the exhibition is rhythmed in studies in, not studies of or studies about, which is against this idea that this is not about studying, like being the student and the thing is there and then you are not touched by the study. The study in means immersive. And so those studies correspond more or less with major obsessions of Steve that sometimes occupied him for a decade and then he left them. Sometimes occupied it from the beginning of his career to the end. The first study is study of pedestrian movement, in pedestrian movement. And that concerns the 1960s. It's very obvious. Steve is credited for inventing walking, which doesn't make any sense, but inventing walking in the sense of being one of the first choreographers to say, okay, let's just do a piece entirely dedicated to some people who walk on stage. Incidentally, Ivan Reiner, who was a colleague of his, was credited with inventing jogging, which is nice, like they have each a role in that history of dance. So that's one decade. But now the room that we are in is somehow another decade, but at the same time, all Steve's life, a study in anarchy. Yeah, and that's something that is everywhere in what he does. In 1970, he leaves New York, he goes in a farm, and he grows vegetable. And that's part of what he does as a living. Not to depend upon institutions and to be able to live from what he produces as a dancer. So dissociating the economy slightly through farming. That's one example. Anarchy is also his way of interrogating relationships between authors. Like, what happens if we decide that all of us, all of the people who are on stage are the authors, rather than just one choreographer massively glorified by the star system, and then the dancers who are anonymous bodies who could be replaced. What happens if we are all authors together at once? And that results in those explorations that you can see there, which were publicized as this amazing thing where 10 choreographers dance to each other, and that's what is happening. And anarchy also repeats in other grounds, which is the next room, which is the room concerning contact improvisation, which is a study in anarchy in the relation between two people. What happens if you start just from, can I? Yeah. It's nice to ask before touching, right? Just remember. What happens if we start touching and decide that we have no idea what's going to happen from that, yeah? Just follow, oh shit, sorry, I didn't mean to be rude. What happens if we have no idea what's going to happen and nobody calls the shot? Neither Joao is deciding, nor I. We are just trying to listen and follow each other. And this requires what? This requires techniques for listening to each other. This requires techniques of patience, yeah?
And also don't be afraid of the ridiculous.
Do you feel ridiculous, Joao?
No, I'm not afraid.
This is why is this anarchy? It's not like we're not. Of course, anarchy is often associated with chaos and bad stuff that are happening to people when there is no rule around them. But this is anarchy in the sense that no one of us is controlling the other. Yeah? It's not that we are not in control. It's that both of us together are developing what is happening between us. That's a question that you can never end. yeah, that you can never end with. That's why it's like, at the same time, it's a study in a decade, and at the same time, it's totally spilling over every room of the exhibition. And so the room it is spilling into is this room called, thank you, a study in touch, which concerns contact improvisation. That's another somehow decade, like it was the 60s, pedestrian movement, what happens if we don't choreograph or choreograph minimally. Now, what happens if we touch? Well, that's it. That's, somehow it's like a gigantic question, but what happens between us if we touch? I'm just being conscious that I'm speaking by myself right now, but Joao is very supportive. This decade of the 70s leads into a third decade somehow. Steve abandons the exploration of contact improvisation around in the beginning of the 80s. For another form, which is which was referred to an instant ago, which is called material for the spine. Yeah, so that's 1960s, you can say pedestrian movement. 1970s, contact improvisation, and then from that, another technique, like it's like never ending. Another technique emerges, which is material for the spine, and this is more focused onto what happens in in this part of your body when you're moving. When you do that, when you fall, when you touch. He comes from contact improvisation at that time, so he's exploring that part. What happens to that very specific place, which is a very weird place? Why? Because you cannot sense it. Yeah, right? You can. It's bones, so you can only sense it by the negative, by what is around it. Yeah, so that weird place of the body, where again, what is my body doing when I am not conscious of it? That's the question. So what is that weird place doing? Yeah, when I'm not turning my attention to it and trying to control it. So again, you see, there's a sort of a progression, and of course, like it's a retrospective look that we're taking at it and somehow lying by historicizing it as if it was totally continuous and he had in mind to do the... No, obviously not, but there's something to be read of that logic when we look at it 6 decades after the beginning, from his 81.
No sé si te han contestado, Íñigo.
I don't know if you did get an answer, Inigo, says Fernando.
If you have the hope of attracting people not connected with dance and performing arts, because, you know, far away of some simple movements, simple concepts, simple tricks, marvelous tricks, I think that the thought and the investigation, exploration of Steve Paxton is more or less complex. How do you think these laser spaces, laser rooms are going to be very helpful for attract people not connected with performing arts? Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. This is an ambition, and for instance, the work you see in the entrance of the exhibition once you come in, where you have 42 people walking from right to left, is based on a work that Steve did in the 60s called Satisfying Lover. And these 42 people, they are not performers, they are not dancers. And the instructions to make the piece is exactly that you should not be a trained dancer in order to work with this surprise of being caught, self-hacked in your own habits, in your own singularity of doing very simple things as walking or standing or sitting. The aim also is that people in the exhibition, the visitors in the exhibition, will feel somehow invited to hack the exhibition and to participate. Of course, this is a desire, is a wish, because also we don't want to impose. I myself, as a visitor, don't like to be pushed into the light. But we invite for this possibility. The Sunday classes, which are free and they are directed to non-performers, and also performers, because Steve also doesn't make that distinction. In a way, contact improvisation is a technique for amateurs. Even if you have 30 years of experience, or if you have 1 week of experience, those are the conditions that two bodies have in order to negotiate this relationship in the present moment and to protect each other from falling and keep moving together. So the exhibition is designed in order for people to feel this kind of inclination, let's say. It's almost as if normally people, when they come to exhibition, they stay in their vertical position all the time. No, they look at things. And here we hope that people have a little inclination towards the movement. And if they don't do it, it's almost okay, as long as they have the inclination. And maybe, who knows, if they come again, if they come twice, because this is an exhibition, in order to perceive it properly, you should take 8 hours maybe. Because each room has a lot of content. You can even sleep, you can wake up again, you can see it again. When you end the exhibition, you can start again. So you can even loop the exhibition. So it's a kind of a proposition that invites people to go into this inclination. Who knows, maybe they fall into the movement, into the experience. Yes. This is also a challenge for an institution, for any institution, for a museum, because museums and galleries and white boxes, they are normally, the mind frame is designed in order to protect the work, but here is the opposite. The mind frame should be to invite the occupation and the contamination and the experience. But what Steve, you are not Steve, no? No, you're not Steve. You touch my shoulder, but you are not Steve. You are Romain. What Romain said is very important, is that the dancing is already happening when you visit the exhibition. If we are able to inform the visitor that this movement, for instance, this movement that we normally have of observation, of stopping, of looking a little bit like this to read a little note, yeah, of doing this with the neck and maybe do this gesture to someone who is following you, and you do this. All of these little gestures that you already do, like this movement you are doing with your ear, yeah, all of these gestures are dance. The only thing is that you are not conscious that you are doing dance because you are just being functional. So one of the most revolutionary aspects of Steve's legacy is to inform that the small dance is happening all the time, every moment. Even when you are sleeping, it's happening. So if that already happens, I think we achieve a very interesting level of communication with the regular visitor. But of course, the visitor, if he feels encouraged, can even go a little bit further, because all of the work of Steve is designed not for the specialist, not for the virtuoso. It's designed for the regular body, we can say the pedestrian body. And even as a dancer, we have many years of experience as dancers. What he asks from us is not our knowledge, what we know. He asks us to suspend the knowledge and to go back to something that is simple, standing, laying down, sitting. Observe yourself while doing what you always do. And the act of choreography, let's say, is the observation. So once you observe, you are choreographing, because you put light into something that was hidden. So in that sense, the work of Steve is also very political, because he puts light into the periphery, into what is not in the center. And normally, revolutions or cutting edge thinking doesn't happen in the center, happens in the periphery. So this is a very interesting lesson for politicians and also anyone who is involved with organizing the others or promoting society or get involved in the business of organizing the life of others, to be very attentive that maybe the future, the cutting edge, the new questions to the old answers are not happening in the center but are happening in the periphery. So in that sense, it's a very political statement that Steve does throughout his life. Yeah.
And I can say, with a little story of what happened in Lisbon, is that one spectator, she came for about 2 months. She only came to the napping area. She would come and just directly not see any work. And then towards the end, she started to go and see the exhibition. For me, that's the napping area is the trap for everyone, hopefully. I would be really sincerely happy that people don't see the exhibition and that the only work that they see is not a work of Steve, it's just a place where you can rest. And that, for me, it's already, opening a space in an art center, in the center of a city, kind of literally, physically, geographically, to open a space where nothing can be done, literally, you can do nothing, is something that corresponds to the act of Steve. And maybe 2 years after, something will be heard of that act and connected to the life work of Steve. For me, that's really enough.
So, if you don't mind, we can take advantage to have a look together in movement to the exhibition with the press. So, thank you very much. Vamos a aprovechar para hacer, aprovechando que están los comisarios aquí.
So we're taking advantage of your presence here to walk around the exhibit. So you're all invited. And also to attend 7:30, the opening. Thank you very much. Well, thank you.
I'm in this place. Thank you.
Thank you.